Hello students, welcome to Female Physics class. A video series to আমি ভেক্টৰৰ বিষয়ে শিকি আছো. This is my ninth lecture. So before this, I have completed 8 lectures on the vectors where I have explained basics of vectors, then why the vector is added only using the triangle law, then addition of vectors, subtraction of vectors, negative of a vector, lots of things, angle between two vectors. These concepts are explained very beautifully in my previous lectures. So I have also explained some of the basic numericals on the vectors, uh, what we have done in our previous lectures. So I will give the link of all those videos in my description box. So today I'm going to discuss the product of vectors. Okay, there are three type of products. Okay, how we can multiply a vector. First one is we have already studied, that is the multiplication of vector by a scalar number. Okay, now if we multiply a vector by a scalar number, then the magnitude of the vector increases by that times. Okay, if you multiply a vector by 2, then the magnitude of the vector will be increased by 2 times. Okay, but its direction remains same. Now there are another way in which we can multiply two vectors. Okay, there are two kinds of multiplication of vector. One is scalar or dot product of two vectors. That means when we multiply two vectors, the resultant is a scalar quantity. Okay, we are multiplying two vectors, but we are getting one scalar. Okay, that is called the scalar. That's why it is called the scalar or dot product. So we are going to explain or going to learn today the scalar or dot product. Okay, so let's start. So why this is called scalar product? Okay, why this is called a scalar product? Because when we multiply any two vectors, okay, if you multiply any two vectors like vectors p and q, when we multiply these two, then we will get a scalar. Okay, scalar quantity here. So that's why the name here is the scalar product. Or why this dot product name came? So it is represented by dot. কিন্তু ফিজিক্যাল সিগনিফিকেন্স থকা নামটো কি হ'ব? স্কেলাৰ প্ৰডাক্ট. ওকে, স্কেলাৰ শব্দটো শুনাৰ লগে লগে আমি কি গম পাম যে যি দুটা ভেক্টৰ আমি মাল্টিপ্লাই কৰি আছো, সেই দুটা ভেক্টৰ মাল্টিপ্লাই কৰিলে আমি এটা স্কেলাৰ পাওঁ. আমি মাল্টিপ্লাই কৰি আছো দুটা ভেক্টৰ, বাট আমি পাই আছো এটা স্কেলাৰ. ওকে, so now how does this product is defined? Okay, so dot products of two vectors is defined as the product of their magnitudes and the cosines of the angle between them. That is, let us suppose we have two vectors p and vector q. Okay, an angle between them is theta. Okay, this is the angle theta. Okay, so now how the dot product of this p and q vector is defined as the scalar product of these two vectors is defined as like this. Okay, p dot q. So it is defined like this: p dot q is vector p magnitude, vector q magnitude, and cos of the angle between the vectors, that is this angle theta. Okay, this angle theta. Okay, so how does this is defined? So if you have any vector, any two vector p and q, an angle between them is theta. So always remember the scalar product is represented by a dot between the two vectors pq, the magnitude of vector p, magnitude of vector q, then cos of angle between these two vectors. Okay, আমি angle between the vectors কেনেকে চাই জানো, so এইটো আমি মনত ৰাখিব লাগিব. আৰু এই যেটো quantity resultant quantity টো আহিব multiply কৰাৰ পিছত, this is a scalar quantity, but তুমি যিকেটা quantity multiply কৰি আছা সেইকেটা কিন্তু কি আছিলে? Vector আছিলে. Okay, vector. This is also vector, but after multiplication you are getting a scalar. That's why this is called the scalar product, and this is defined by this particular formula. Okay, so let's move to this one. So here in this particular formula, that is p dot q equal to pq cos of theta. Theta is the angle between them. Okay. So that's why this cos theta can be written as P dot Q divided by magnitude of P. Okay. Magnitude of P dot Q divided by magnitude of P and Q. Okay. This is defined by like this. Okay. Then the theta can be found out by inverse of this cos inverse of dot product of these two vectors divided by magnitude of the two vectors P and Q. Okay. So next, these are very some of the important definitions related to the dot product. Just you need to remember. Now let's move to some properties of the scalar product. The dot product or the scalar product between two vectors obeys commutative law. That is, G2 orientation at আমি multiply নকৰো কিয় P dot Q, even if P dot Q law বা Q dot P law, there is no any ambiguity. Okay, so that means আমি P dot Q কৰো বা Q dot P কৰো, কোনো কথা নাই, দুটা সদায় সমান হ'ব, because the resultant is a scalar. Okay, ইয়াৰ ডিরেকশনৰ কোনো কথা নাই, just resultant is a scalar. So P dot Q কৰো বা Q dot P কৰো, there is no matter. Okay, so that's why it is called commutative law. মানে আমি প্ৰথমতে P ক ৰাখো বা প্ৰথমতে পিছত Q ক ৰাখো, সৰল এটা P ভেক্টৰ আছে আৰু এটা আমাৰ Q ভেক্টৰ আছে, মাজৰ এংগল থিটা। তো মই P টো আগত ৰাখিছো নে Q টো পিছত ৰাখিছো বা Q টো আগত ৰাখিছো নে P টো আগত ৰাখি মাল্টিপ্লাই টো কৰিছো, that doesn't matter in case of the scalar product or the dot product, right? Next, the dot product obey distributive law. Okay, dot product obey distributive law. Dot product obey the distributive law. Now what is this that I am saying that the dot product is obeying the distributive law? That is like this. If you have three vectors, okay, then P dot addition of two other vectors, that means you can distribute it like this: P dot Q plus P vector dot R vector. Okay, this is another important property for the scalar product. Okay, and it is always a scalar which is positive. Okay, now let me see. A scalar means P dot Q করিলে তুমি কি পাবা? We are getting a scalar, and this scalar is nothing but P magnitude, Q magnitude, and cos of the angle between the two vectors, that is this one, P vector, Q vector, and the angle between them is theta. Okay, so now this value, whether this scalar value will be positive, negative, that will depend on the angle between the two vectors theta. Now if you see, when theta, P is positive, Q is positive because they are magnitude, when theta is 0 to 90 degrees, that means theta is in the first quadrant. And you all know the first quadrant or trigonometric ratio, যিকোনো trigonometric ratio, all the trigonometric ratio like sine, cos, tan, cosec, sec, all are positive. And since 0 to 90 degree, so cos of theta will be positive. So if theta lies less than 90 degree, then the vectors multiplication gives a positive scalar. Okay, and theta lies between 90 degree and 180 degree, then this will be negative. Okay, as in the second quadrant, 90 to 180, cos theta is negative, only sine is positive, all other trigonometric ratios are negative. So that's why this scalar quantity may be positive or negative depending on the angle between the two vectors. Okay, let's move to the scalar product of two vectors, when it will be maximum and when it will be minimum. Okay, that also depends on the angle between these two vectors. That is, when theta equal to 0 degree, then the scalar product of the two vectors will be maximum. Because you see, scalar product defines P dot Q is equal to PQ cos of theta. PQ is constant. It is only depending on the cos of theta. This is scalar value. This is as a whole is a scalar. And this value, whether it is maximum or minimum, it minimum hobo ne maximum hobo, সেইটো কাৰ ওপৰত depend কৰি আছে থিটাৰ ওপৰত এনে cos theta maximum value 1 so গতিকে cos theta যেতিয়া 1 হ'ব তেতিয়া কি হ'ব ডট প্ৰডাক্টৰ যিটো ভ্যালু সেইটো সদায় maximum হ'ব for any two vectors. Now when cos theta is equal to 1, what is the value of theta? We know that theta equal to 0 degree. For cos theta equal to 0, theta will be equal to 0 degree. Now, when theta will be equal to 0 degree between two vectors, that means this is P vector, then they are parallel, okay? This is Q vector. So, two parallel vectors, if you are multiplying two parallel vectors, okay? Multiplying means how you are multiplying? It is a scalar product, okay? Dot product of two particular parallel vectors will give you the maximum value for that two particular vectors, okay? Now, whenever you are getting the dot product is equal to P into Q, okay, then these vectors are parallel. Now, and this will be your maximum value because cos theta is equal to 1 is the maximum value for cos theta. Maximum value for cos theta. And maximum value depends on only the value of the cos theta because it is varying with theta. So when theta is equal to 0, the value of the cos theta is maximum. That's why scalar product of any two vectors is maximum when the vectors is having angle 0 degree in between them, that is their parallel. Okay. Now next is minimum value of this. Okay. So when the vectors are orthogonal means they're perpendicular to each other, then it will have a minimum value that is cos theta equal to 0 degree. Okay. That means this one. Suppose here the here the vectors are orthogonal, right? Orthogonal means they're perpendicular to each other. One vector is this one, P vector. Okay, this one is P vector, Q vector, P vector, and this one is a Q vector. They are having a 90 degree in between them. So then, according to the formula, P dot Q is equal to PQ cos of 90 degree. So this will give you 0 because cos 90 equal to 0. Whenever dot product of any two vectors is become 0, when it becomes 0, that means we will say that these two vectors are perpendicular to each other. That means it is also a way to prove that whether any two vectors are perpendicular or not. If we are given two particular vectors and they say prove that these two vectors are perpendicular to each other, then we'll always go for the dot product between these two vectors. If dot product comes out to be 0, then certainly we will say that the P vector and Q vector are perpendicular to each other. So this is one proof to prove that vector P and vector Q, that means given two vectors are perpendicular to each other. Okay, we'll take the numericals in my next videos. Okay, so now move to the orthogonal unit vectors. That means the unit vectors along x-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. What will be the dot product of those unit vectors? Suppose this is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis, and this is our z-axis. Okay, so along this we will have I vector, that is I cap unit vector. Okay, I vector I cap, along y it is j cap, along z it is k cap. Now you see I cap is a vector if you dot product with the j cap. Now remember the dot product formula. P dot q is equal to what? Magnitude of P, magnitude of Q, cos of the angle between them. Okay, so I dot j will be your magnitude of the I vector is 1 because these are unit vector. Magnitude of j vector is also 1. Okay, here P is I cap, Q is j cap, 1. Now what is the angle between them? Angle between them is 90 degree, so it is cos of 90 degree, that is 0. Cos 90 is 0. Okay, dot product of the orthogonal vectors, dot product of I cap and j cap is 0. Similarly, dot product of j cap dot k cap is also 0. Similarly, k cap dot I cap equal to 0 because they are perpendicular to each other. And ইয়াৰ আগতে আমি পঢ়ি আহিছো অলপ আগত মোৰ আগৰ স্লাইডখনত যে দুটা ভেক্টৰ পাৰপেন্ডিকুলাৰ হলে সিহঁতৰ মাজৰ ডট প্ৰডাক্ট কি হ'ব 0 হ'ব now if you do the dot product of I cap and I cap okay দুটা যদি I cap ভেক্টৰৰ আমি যদি ডট প্ৰডাক্ট কৰো কি পাম 1 because they are parallel if they are parallel you will get 1 dot 1 1 into 1 into cos of 0 degree right now cos 0 degree is 1 so it is 1 so again j dot j if you do then they are parallel. So for parallel vectors, it is equal to a product of their magnitudes. Okay, okay, product of their magnitudes. That means it is also 1. Then k cap dot k cap is equal to 1. Okay, that means if you have two vectors p dot q and they are parallel for parallel vectors, this is equal to product of their magnitudes only. Product of their magnitudes. Okay, so this is equal to p into q magnitudes or multiplication to কৰিলে আমি তাৰ ভ্যালুটো পাই যাম similarly মই ইয়াত কৈছো I dot I কৰিলে কি হ'ব product of their because I and I the same vector they are parallel to each other so সিহঁতৰ মাজৰ angle 0 degree গতিকে product of their magnitude I cap is the unit vector so magnitude is 1 so I into 1 into 1 that is 1 okay so remember I dot j 0 j dot k 0 k dot I 0 because they are perpendicular to each other x y z then I dot I is equal to 1, j dot j is equal to 1, k dot k is equal to 1. Okay, these are very important properties that will be used in our numerical problems. Okay, next, the component of vectors p along vectors q. So how to find this one? Okay, so let me draw first one p vector here. Okay, and q vector here. Suppose this is our q vector and this is our p vector. Okay. মই ইয়াৰ আগৰ ভিডিওটো কৈছিলো যে এটা ভেক্টৰৰ কম্পোনেন্ট আন এটা ভেক্টৰৰ দিশত ল'ব লাগিলে মই কি কৰিম we will draw a perpendicular from the tip of that vector okay so go to my previous videos you will get this okay so this particular projection is called the component of the projection means this part okay this much part this particular vector is called the projection of p along q that is component of the vector p along q so let me take this one as the this is how much if you do this is p cos theta magnitude from this point to this point okay let me take another ink option ink color let me take it to be white okay so from this point to this point magnitude is p cos theta from this triangle okay now p cos theta is along the q vector if you may multiply this p cos theta magnitude with the unit vector along q you will get the component vector along this one okay this is the component of p along q okay so that's why this p cos theta q cap is the component along the q vector now why how this formula comes so let me break it so p dot q what is the value it is pq cos of theta we can write like this right but this is a scalar quantity this is a scalar quantity so now here the p cos theta okay into q is your p dot q vector right now so p dot q is equal to pq cos theta we can write so p cos theta is equal to q p cos theta into q we can write like this now what about this component how can we write this one so this one can be written like this p cos theta q cap is equal to p dot q vector by q vector into q cap how we can write like this you see if you write this pq p dot q will give you what you write here p okay p cos theta q cap is equal to what is this we need to prove this so pq cos theta will be there okay divided by q so into q cap this q will got cancelled okay So this will give you what? P cos theta into Q cap, right? So P cos theta Q cap, Q can be written like this. That means dot product of both vectors divided by the Q vector into Q cap will give you the P dot Q cap. That means Q vector divided by Q vector magnitude will give you Q, okay, into Q cap. Okay. So this is the component of vectors P. This is a P vector, okay? P vector, whole vector. This is the component of vector P. This is the component of vector P along Q vector. Okay, we can write it like this. G2 ভেক্টৰৰ কম্পোনেন্ট লম সেই ভেক্টৰটো যোনফালে কম্পোনেন্ট লম তাৰ ইউনিট ভেক্টৰ তাক জাস্ট মাল্টিপ্লাই কৰিম কাৰ লগত তাৰ ইউনিট ভেক্টৰৰ লগত so this will be the component of P vector along Q vector and again what we can write component of vector perpendicular to Q. So how can we see this? কেনেকে আমি চাব পাৰো আমি এনেকে চাব পাৰো চোৱা এইটো হল perpendicular direction to Q vector. This is vector perpendicular to Q. This is the direction. Okay. এইটো vector আছিলে আমাৰ P. Okay. এটা ইয়াৰ পৰা যদি তুমি draw কৰি কেনে পাবা এইটো component কি হ'ব এইটো হ'ব আমি আগতে পালো P cos theta. Sorry. This is your P cos theta. Okay. This one. Okay. P cos theta. This can also be written as this vector P cos theta Q cap. Okay. This vector and this vector is same. This is P vector. This vector is your P cos theta Q cap because this vector and this vector is same. Okay. Now this is the component of vector P in a direction perpendicular to the Q. Agote P cos theta Q cap. This is the component of P along Q vector. But this is component of P vector perpendicular to Q vector in direction perpendicular to Q vector. Now what I can write, if this is C vector, then I can write, you see, this is the triangle rule, C vector plus this vector, that is P dot Q cap into Q vector is equal to, this is your P vector, okay, P vector. From this, the component C vector along the direction perpendicular to vector Q of P is written as P vector minus P dot Q cap, right? We got this? Okay. So I think these two formulas are very, very important for you. Okay. One is how we write the component of one vector along the other vector and how we write the component of one vector in a direction perpendicular to that vector. Okay. So okay. Thank you. So তোমালোকে এইখিনি বস্তু ভালকে চাবা যদি ইয়াত কৰবাত তোমালোকৰ আখোৱা থাকে তেতিয়ালে মোক খুদিবা but these two formulas are very, very important. Okay. So ইয়াৰ আগৰ যিখিনি ভিডিঅ' আছে মই তাৰ লিংক তোমালোকক ডিছক্ৰিপশ্যন বক্সত দি দিম। So I hope all of you have understood this concept on dot product. So thank you all.